In today's video, we're continuing on our series looking at all 31 NHL teams and recapping their seasons and taking a look at their 2018 off-season plans. Today's team we're going to discuss is the Carolina Hurricanes, and that's coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams. So if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top, today we're discussing the Carolina Hurricanes. We're going to do a quick recap of their 17-18 season, and then we're going to discuss what we should expect in this 2018 offseason. I fully suspect this offseason for the Hurricanes is going to be quite busy, and we're going to see lots of things change. We've already seen quite a few things change with this organization throughout the year, and I fully expect that to continue. So let's jump in here with a season recap first, and then we'll jump into the offseason. Obviously, the Hurricanes missed the playoffs yet again. Unfortunately, continuing on the playoff drought in Carolina, they finished with a 36, 35, and 11 record for 83 points. That puts them in 6th place in the Metro Division. There was times during the season when it looks like they might actually have a good shot at making the playoffs. They were kind of in the mix there for a while, but as the season went on, they kind of fell out of favor and dropped further down the standings, and thus ended up where they ended up finishing. So obviously the Hurricanes have had a tough road here, being out of the playoffs a lot in the last decade, and obviously they need to make some changes to improve things here. Now obviously one of the big things that happened this year off the ice was ownership. Obviously we saw longtime owner Peter Carmanos finally sell the majority of the stake in the team to new owner Tom Dundon. Obviously Dundon's come in and made a lot of changes so far, and as I mentioned, when we get into the offseason here, we'll discuss a lot of the other things that are likely going to happen as well. So obviously the ownership change was huge for this franchise, something that's been a long time coming, and hopefully will bring long-term stability and further growth to this franchise long-term here. Now the Hurricanes finished with a minus 28 goal differential. They ended up scoring 228 goals for, and they gave up 256 goals against, finishing in 23rd in the NHL in both categories. Obviously, that's not good enough to get into the playoffs, but it's certainly not the worst either. But they've got a lot of work to do to get themselves into the conversation of being a playoff team and having any chance to contend for a Stanley Cup down the road. Now, there were a few bright spots on this team this year. We saw another decent season out of Jeff Skinner, although I think Skinner's still capable of doing more, getting back to that 30 to 40 goal range. But he put up 24 goals, 25 assists for 49 points. Youngster Sebastian Aho certainly had a breakout season, scoring 29 goals and 65 points. Aho is a tremendous player and certainly one of the bright spots for this team moving forward, certainly a player they can build around. They also had a pretty good season out of Teuvo Teravainen. Teravainen put up 23 goals and 64 points and had a pretty good year himself. So they got lots of young players between the forward group and the defense group to kind of build around. Their defense obviously didn't have a fantastic year, neither did the goaltending team, but at the same time there's lots of reason to be optimistic for the future between some of the young forwards and a lot of the young defensemen they have. As I mentioned, goaltending was not a bright spot at all this season. They brought in Scott Darling last season, gave him a 4-year contract. After Darling started the season in Carolina as the starting goaltender, he ended up having a really bad season. He finished with a record of 13, 21, and 7 and 43 games played with a 318 goals against average and an 888 save percentage, among the worst in the league, and he had a terrible year. So obviously they need to hope that Darling bounces back, because with the contract they gave him, he's going to prove to probably be untradeable for a while. And not exactly a great buyout candidate either. So they need more out of Darling. There's just no ands, ifs, or buts around it. They need to get a better performance from him. So hopefully he can bounce back next year and settle into that starting role. Now obviously Cam Ward, the longtime Hurricanes netminder, was expected to be more of a backup this year, but also ended up appearing in 43 games as well with a much better record. Still far off from the league leaders, but still better than Darling. So Cam Ward ended up appearing in 43 games with a record of 23, 14, and 4. Obviously not a fantastic record, but much better than Darling. Finished with a 273 goals against average and a 906 save percentage. So again, not amongst the league leaders, certainly not an elite performance, but much better than Darling. He played way more than expected. So the Hurricanes are going to have to decide next year, do they bring Ward back, go with the same tandem, or do they move on to a fresh start, bringing in a new goalie to battle out for the starting job with Scott Darling, and hope they can find somebody that can push him to be a better goalie and get a better performance. Obviously they need Darling to bounce back between his contract and everything. That he's going to prove to be untradeable and is not a great buyout candidate. So if they can't get a bounce back performance out of Darling, then they're going to be in trouble on goaltending for some time, as long as they have his contract on the books. Now, the defense corps didn't have a fabulous season. A lot of reason to be optimistic, though, about the future of the D-corps. They have a lot of young defensemen, look pretty solid back there. And considering where they're at in their development, I'd say overall they didn't do too badly. But when you have youngsters like Jacob Slavin, Brett Pesce. They're logging some pretty big minutes. You got Justin Falk and Trevor Van Riemsdyk might be guys that we might see moving on this year. We got Noah Hannafin's an RFA and is a player who's been mentioned in trade rumors a lot as well. So regardless if he's back or not, he's still another top young defender that is an important piece. And if he is traded, he should bring back some good value in other assets that can help in other aspects of the team. They also have Hayden Fleury, and of course they also have Jake Bean, who's one of the top prospects for the team as well. So they have all kinds of young defensemen to be excited about, and considering all things, I thought they did okay this year, and they certainly have lots more room to develop and grow as they can develop potentially to one of the top decors in the league based on their potential so far. So it'll be interesting to see what they do in the offseason. Justin Falk is a guy who's been mentioned in trade rumors. They said Trevor Van Riemsdyk's name's been out there a little bit as well. So it'll be interesting to see what they go with here. I mean, Hannafin's a very interesting case. Could they move Hannafin? It's certainly heavily rumored that they might, but at the same time, they got to be careful here. He's a top young defenseman, and they got to make sure they get the right return. But we'll see what the Hurricanes do. But there's certainly lots of room for optimism for the future of that defense core. So let me know down in the comments. Of all their defensemen, who do you see them trading? Do you see them trading Noah Hanifin or Justin Falk or Trevor Van Riemsdyk or maybe all of these guys? Like I said, this team's made it clear they're open for business and everybody's potentially for sale here for the right price. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Obviously, we are going to see some moves that impact that back end, but hard to say which guys move on. So let me know who you think they should trade and who you think they should hang on to. Now, obviously, as I mentioned, some of these players we've already talked about are needing new contracts next season. Obviously, Cam Ward is one. Noah Hanifin is another. Trevor Van Riemsdyk. They're all either UFA or RFA, so they need to have some decisions made on who's coming back next year. Obviously, the RFAs need to be signed if they're going to be traded anyway. Either way, there's lots of decisions here. They have other UFAs that are like Lee Stepniak and Derek Ryan. I'm not really sure either of those guys comes back. I think Stepniak's career may be coming to a close here. I think he only appeared, I believe it was 35 games last year. So I'm going to say more than likely he's done. Ryan, I can see maybe catching on with somebody that's a bottom six forward. It is possible the Hurricanes could bring him back, but I think it's more than likely he moves on. They do have some pretty bright prospects to keep your eyes on as well. I already mentioned Jake Bean talking with the defense corps. Martin Neshcash is a top center prospect for the Hurricanes. He looks to have a tremendous future. He's had a great year and has looked absolutely tremendous when I've had a chance to see him play. So I fully suspect Neshcash to develop into a solid NHL player, a possible first-line candidate for sure. He's arguably one of the top prospects that are already been drafted that's outside the NHL right now. So look for him to join the roster next year. Some other guys to keep your eyes on might be Julian Gauthier. Gauthier had a pretty solid junior career, scoring lots of goals. So we'll see if he can translate that to the NHL level. He's probably going to end up needing another year in the American League before he gets much of an opportunity, be my guess. And Valentin Zykov looked good in the brief time he spent with the Hurricanes at the big club this last year, so I would not be surprised to see him get more of an opportunity this coming season to show what he can do. Obviously, as I mentioned, the change in ownership this year was a big thing for this organization, and it also triggered a lot of other moves. We've seen General Manager Ron Francis be moved from GM to President and then later be fired, so he's completely gone from the organization. We saw Coach Bill Peters walk as he had out in his contract. He's now the head coach for the Calgary Flames. And of course, we've seen a longtime assistant coach as well as former player Rod Brind'Amour be hired as the new head coach. That's certainly an interesting move. Tom Dundon seems to be a big fan of Rod Brind'Amour's, so we'll see what he can do in his first opportunity to be an NHL head coach. Obviously, he's been with the organization a long time. He knows a lot of the players, so in theory, it could be a good move. Obviously, Rod Brind'Amour's was a hard-working player. He was very offensively gifted as well, so he could be a big help for a lot of those young forwards. So time will tell. Obviously, Don Waddell ended up taking over as general manager, and he's since brought in Rick Dudley to help as well. I believe he's the president of hockey operations. My only concern is Waddell and Dudley are the old duo that ran the Atlanta Thrashers, and we all see what happened with that franchise. It was not run very well, and they ended up leaving town and heading back to be the Winnipeg Jets again. So we'll see what goes on there, but I don't have a lot of confidence based on their history. I mean, Rick Dudley's a fairly well-respected hockey man. He's bounced around the NHL for a long time with different organizations, but with him and Waddell were together in Atlanta, things did not go well. So we'll see. I mean, obviously, when Tom Dundon was rumored to be interviewing a lot of different guys for the GM position, a lot of the bigger names that were up-and-comers really didn't want anything to do with the job. A lot of the young up-and-coming potential GMs around the league, that a lot of them are assistant GMs right now, once they had a chance to meet with Dundon, were not overly pleased, I don't think, or seemed to remove themselves from the vacancy of the position. So I'm not really sure. It seemed to be a combination of the salary being offered as well as the fact that he might be a tough guy to work for because he's going to be so hands-on, scrutinizing everything. He's going to be a very, very hands-on owner, which is not a very common thing in professional sports. A lot of them kind of hire their people to run the team, and they're kind of stay back and let them do their jobs. And I'm not sure Dundon's going to be that type of guy. So for a lot of guys, it just wasn't the right fit. So he ended up going with Don Waddell. So we'll see how that goes. But like I said, I have some concerns, but hopefully they prove me wrong. Obviously, the Hurricanes were very fortunate at the NHL Draft Lottery. They were able to snag the #2 overall pick. That pick should produce a potentially franchise-altering player. I mean, more than likely, the pick would be used for Andrei Svechnikov. He's a tremendous hockey player from the OHL. He scored lots of goals. He's a very smart hockey player as well. He's got good size. So he's, a guy that can put up a lot of goals, a lot of points, but not be irresponsible when it comes to the defensive side of the game as well. So I think he's a very, very solid hockey player on both ends of the ice. So they'd be crazy to trade that pick. I know there's been some talk, maybe they would consider it, but in all honesty, I think they should hang on to it and take Svechnikov. It's a smart thing to do. They need to draft and develop the right way here to build themselves into a winner. And when they make trades, if whatever, depending on what they do, they need to kind of make sure they do it right, because there's a lot of teams that have done this the wrong way and just been rebuilding forever and ever. Take a look at the Buffalo Sabres. Hopefully they can finally move out of this with the #1 overall pick. But the Sabres is another example. They've been rebuilding forever. So it's not something the Hurricanes really want to do. But at the same time, the Hurricanes have been kind of stuck in a rut for a long time as well. So hopefully with some new direction and hands-on owner, hopefully things will improve and be able to move forward from there. But they certainly need to make sure they use that #2 pick wisely. Leave some comments down below. What do you think is going to happen with this team in the offseason? Obviously, there's tons of speculation. The general manager, Don Waddell, has made it widely clear that they're open for business, willing to trade just about anybody not named Sebastian Aho. So obviously, there's lots of moves that could be made. There's lots of guys' names being brought up in speculation. So let me know down in the comments, who do you think they should keep? Who do you think they should trade? And should they definitely take Svechnikov at the draft? I'd like to hear your thoughts on that as well. If you're new to our channel, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams. There's plenty of content here for all fan bases to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button. And if you like this video, make sure you hit that like button as well. I'd really appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.